Hello, everyone. My name is Mark from the Misplay Podcast, and you're listening to Eternal Journey, everyone's favorite Eternal podcast.
Welcome to Eternal Journey, the podcast.
What is up, all my knights and padawans out there? Welcome back to another episode of Eternal Journey, the podcast that talks about all things Eternal with a focus on limited play. I'm your host, Jedi, and today we're going to be doing our Echoes of Eternity First Impressions. We've had the format out for 2 weeks, week and a half, something like that, and we've gotten to do a bunch of drafting, and we're going to give out a bunch of little hot takes and snippets and things that we have learned from the format to help you get better at the format yourself. But first, joining me on the line from the pleasant and enjoyable West Coast, we have Darth Herman 2. Alex, how are you doing, buddy?
Good. How's everyone doing?
Absolutely wonderful. Had some good drafts, had some bad drafts, but had a ton of fun with them all, and I got to kick it with my friends, i.e. you guys, so all is well. How's the draft week treating you?
Not too bad. Trying to stay in the top 100, and hopefully I'll be able to manage that here for the last few hours, but it's been treating me pretty well.
Awesome. All right, then coming from finally sunny Colorado, survived the blizzard 2020, we have John Holio. What is up, homie?
No, not much, man. Just loving this draft format. Having some fun.
Yeah, I can hear the smile in your voice. Excellent. We're going to be talking about that here in a moment. But as usual, guys, want to mention twitch.tv/Jedi_EJ, where you can catch me and my boys drafting every Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. Yeah, hang out, enjoy it, learn some stuff, do some cube drafting. But if you are not able to catch me live, you can always catch me at Eternal Journey on YouTube, where I have I'm up to 5 draft videos now of the current format. So if you want to see how my thought process goes for the drafting, you can check it out there, as well as the video version of this podcast. So especially our common and uncommon set review, where we go card by card, breaking down each and every card, evaluating what we think it would be potentially good or bad. If you're one of those people that you have to see the card, have a hard time visioning it in your mind, you can go to the YouTube channel and see every card on screen as we talk about it. Next up, I want to shout out Jed the Homrid. Jed the Homrid took some time to develop a new type of card evaluation for the format using the entire Eternal community. So they have posted on various Discords as well on the Reddit. So look for Jed the Homrid on Reddit, where you can find the community draft stats, where everyone can go in, take about 10 to 15 minutes, go in there, and you give your own personal rating for each card in the draft format. And they are compiling all this information and data so we can have a more accurate rating. It is a 1 to 10 scale, so a little more specific. So yeah, if you have some time, definitely go out there and check it out. It's a good, really cool, interesting labor of love from Jed the Homrid, taking time out of their own day. So if you have the chance, contribute, and you too can be a part of the overall stats. And finally, shout outs. We have some new people joining the Jedi Order this week. We have Win/Man and Dread Pirate Hurley. Thank you guys so much for subbing to the channel and joining the Jedi Order. I really appreciate it. And it lets me know, hey, we're making the community a little bit better, little by little. And of course, big shout out to Owen, Old Iron Nuts, a fellow streamer that gifted a couple subs and gave some bit to the channel. Really appreciate it. Occasionally we are able to raid each other. He sadly streams while I'm at work, but every once in a while he gets on a little earlier. I stream a little bit later and I can raid him, or he stays up a little bit later in his and raids me. So super great guy, a ton of fun, does a lot of constructed, plays around with all kinds of little casual tournaments, picking different themes. So definitely when you get the chance, check out Old Iron Nuts on Twitch.
All right, guys, hanging out in the kingdom. That's a fun stream.
It really is. Like the couple of times I've been able to, it's a very enjoyable, very entertaining guy. I love it. I don't know how he wears all that armor all night long, but hey, each
like a boss.
True story. All right, so Alex, John, you guys ready to do some crack-a-packs?
Yeah, we've got a bunch of community submitted pack one pick ones here that we asked for this show, and we got, I think, 6 of them lined up for you guys.
Awesome. Yep. So because we omitted the crack-a-pack or the pack one pick ones for the last 2 episodes because we wanted to try to get to the bare bones on it, even though they both were still plus 4 hours. We're going to make it up for you guys, and we're going to give you a bunch submitted by the community today, and we're going to break it down to kind of give you a heads up and a leg up on your decisions, because it's kind of ironic because pack one pick one is typically the most non-consequential pick of your draft, because you have absolutely no idea what you're going to get past, but at the same time it can sometimes steer you in a certain direction because you have access to the best cards. So anywho, let's dive into it. We're going to do these a little bit quicker just because I want to get through them. So we'll probably do 4 at a time, just to, like we've done before, to kind of get through it a little bit. So starting at our commons, John, we have Assault Shield. This is a +0/+2 relic weapon for 3 red. And summon, get +1 attack for each of your units. So kind of a variant on Angry Prophet there. So if you have 3 units in play, it's a 3/2, etc., etc. Then we have Ruinous Burst. This is a fast spell for 1 fire. Deal 1 damage to 2 enemies. So of note, it has to be 2 enemies, but you can always go face. That is something to consider. It is that common. Next up, we have Book Club Yeti. This is a 3/1 Yeti at common for 2 primal. Sacrifice Book Club Yeti to deal damage to an enemy unit equal to the highest cost among your relics. Of note, it doesn't cost anything to sacrifice the Yeti, so you can do it the turn it comes into play or later on in the game. And then finally, our 4th common here is Sunset Enforcer. This is the 5/5 giant cultist at common for 6 time. It has pledge. And when you sacrifice another unit, Sunset Enforcer gets +2/+2. Any of these stand out to you, John?
And in this first row, I'm pretty much only looking at this Book Club Yeti.
Yeah, fair. 3/1 for 2 is serviceable, especially in Primal being a little more aggressive, but the fact that it turns into quite a decent removal spell later definitely adds it. So yeah, I'm good with that.
Yeah, that card is overperformed in this format. And then, like, these other cards, Ruinous Burst and Sunset Enforcer, you know, like, they tend to go later, and you only want so many Ruinous Bursts. And I think Sunset Enforcer is more of like a payoff, so you already kind of want to be in that deck. And, you know, 6 drops are more replaceable and easier to come by. So
yeah, very much.
I just do not care for this Assault Shield.
Yep. Okay, next up, second row of commons, we have Platinum Kirin, 1/2 Flying Kirin at 2 time, Mastery 2. Create and draw an Eternity Core. Eternity Core is a 4-cost relic that gives you +2 maximum power. Unfamiliar Interloper, 1/2 Stranger at common for 2. Summon, gain an influence of your choice. Corrupted 1. So when Interloper dies, you will get a 0/1 shade. 0/2 shade? Yeah, 0/2 shade that you can sacrifice for 1 to give you gain an influence of your choice. And then at the end of every turn, it will get -1 health until it dies. Tainted Mark is next, which is a 5 primal cursed relic at common. When 1 or more units hit the cursed player, draw a card. Of note, it is 1 or more, so if you attack with 3 things and all 3 get in, you are still only going to draw a single card. And Covetous Stranger, 2/1 Stranger at common for 2 fire. When 1 or more strangers attack, their owner creates and draws a treasure trove. Alex, what stands out to you out of these 4 commons?
The Tainted Mark and the Covetous Stranger stand out, and I do like Tainted Mark, especially with relic synergies, but I would probably go with the Covetous Stranger here. That's one of the strangers that I like, especially if you are on the play.
Okay, and so going back to you, John, between Covetous Stranger and Book Club Yeti, which one are you favoring?
I'm more into the Stranger as a first pick here.
Okay, all right, cool. Let's dive into our uncommons. We have Touch of Purity, the 2 Justice fast spell at uncommon. Give 1 of your units lifesteal, then give a unit weapon or spell in your hand lifesteal. Of note, you have to have a unit in play for this to happen, but then of course the additional lifesteal that goes in your hand can go on any weapon, spell, or unit, which is quite powerful. Next up, we have Mark Maker. This is the 3/2 Oni at uncommon for 3 fire. Summon, play a +1 attack weapon with Overwhelm on one of your other units. Corrupted 2. And then finally, Limited All-Star, Dark Mask Stalker. This is a 3/5 Unseen Cultist at uncommon for 4 Shadow. When a unit goes to the enemy void, Dark Mass Stalker gets its battle skills. This is at any point in time, so if it gets milled off the top of their deck, if they discard it from their hand, or if it gets killed from the battlefield, the Dark Mass Stalker will gain its battle skills. Mastery 12, the enemy player discards the top 12 cards of their deck. Back to you, Alex. Any of these uncommons take Covetous Stranger?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the Dark Mask Stalker. So just great stats, great ability, stealing void units abilities and stuff. Yeah, I don't see this card as much for me to be able to pick it anymore.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think everyone knows the Dark Mass Stalker is a good card, so I rarely get it passed to me at all. John, anything different?
No, I think I'd take the Stalker here as well, but I do really like Markmaker a lot. But I don't know. I think there's a higher chance that you'll get another one of those, or replacement level 3-drop. I guess. I think the Stalker has a bigger upside if you end up in Shadow.
No, that's a very good point, though. I agree. Markmaker does a lot of work. That 3 attack, definitely 3 is the sweet spot in this format. It seems like anything with 4 health can survive a lot longer, and anything with 3 health dies and trades pretty easily. But the overwhelm on the weapon definitely helps with flyers and other things when you have Tainted Mark. So I agree with you. Markmaker is definitely not something to look over easily, but I'm with you guys. Dark Mass Stalker is definitely the highest value card in this pack. Going into our rare, we have Elaw's Nightmare General. Wait, Elo's? Is that how you say it, John? You say it how LSV says it. So how do you say it?
I don't do I say Elaz.
Elaz. Okay, I'm pretty sure. I feel like that's how LSV says it, but maybe not. Maybe it was Korea Burke. I don't know. All right, anyways, moving on. It is a 3/1 Nightmare Paladin at Legendary for 2 Justice. And it reads, your curses can't be killed. Elaz is invulnerable to damage while the enemy player and each of their units are cursed. Alex, anything special about this card? I mean, I know we talked about it in the set review, but not everyone might have listened to it. So anything that might pull you off of Dark Mass Stalker from Elaz?
No, not really. I mean, I wouldn't fault you for taking it if, you want a mythic rare or whatever, or legendary. But it's a hard to cast 2-drop 3/1, which is like a pretty just standard stat line, and then with a pretty irrelevant text for limited. So yeah, I'm off of this guy. I'm still with the Dark Mass Stalker.
Anything from you, John?
I mean, it's a strictly worse Book Club Yeti, and there's a Book Club Yeti in this pack.
Yeah, true. So. All right, sweet. So Dark Mass Stalker is the one for this first pack. All right, and that pack was brought to us courtesy of Extinction, a fellow top-ranked drafter. Next pack, we have courtesy of Death, a former guest on the show and a member of the Jedi Order. Starting off with the commons, Alex, this is going to you. We have Fanatical Stranger, a 3/1 stranger at common for 3 shadow. When one or more strangers attack, their owner plays a 1/1 cultist. Rage, fast spell uncommon for 1 cost. Give a unit +1/+1 this turn. Token of Purpose, it is depleted power with your choice of gaining either Primal, Justice, or Shadow. And Skeletal, I don't know why that gave me a hiccup, but Skeletal Dragon is a 0/1 flying Nightmare Dragon for 3 shadow. Summon plus attack equal to the highest attack unit in your void. It is a summon effect, so it maintains that ability despite anything changing zones. Any of these stand out to you, Alex?
So the picks probably for me between these 4 would be between the Fanatical Stranger and the Skeletal Dragon. Leaning towards the Fanatical Stranger. It does some work. The 1/1 body that you get chumps a lot of the big stuff that's in this set because a lot of it doesn't have evasion. It's just a big, dumb dude. So I would probably lean towards the Fanatical Stranger here.
Okay. All right, moving on, we have Biting Winds. This is a fast spell at common for 3 primal. Deal 6 damage to an attacking enemy. Siege Provisions is a 2 justice relic at common. Once per turn, you may pay 3 to give one of your units +2/+2 and endurance this turn. Spellcraft 1, play Endure, which makes a unit invulnerable to damage this turn. Zulta Exile, 2/2 exile at common for 3 Justice, Aegis, and Endurance. And finally, Dive Bomb. 4 cost, 4 Justice, fast spell at common, give 2 of your units +1/+4, and flying at this turn. John, what do you think?
For pack one, pick one out of these, I would look at Biting Winds, I think. It's a good card. It's one that if you're in Primal, you'd be pretty happy to have multiples of in your deck. Dive Bomb and Siege Provisions are playable, but those are in like the one of in your deck category, I think, in Justice. So there's a huge opportunity to get another one of these down the road.
Yeah, I like Biting Winds as well. Fast speed removal seems pretty good. Alex, I take it you've probably jumped ship onto Biting Winds as well?
Definitely. I mean, it deals with swinging and relics. It's a good card.
Okay. All right. Now going into the uncommons, things are going to get a little interesting. We have Display of Menace. Display of Menace is a 3-cost fast spell for Fire, Primal Shadow. And you can choose one of 3 modes. Deal 1 damage to each enemy, or kill an enemy relic and give relics in the enemy voidbound, or sacrifice a unit to sacrifice a unit to draw 2 of the top 4 cards of your deck, bottom the rest. All right, then going into the other uncommons, we have Seer, which is the 2 fire fast spell uncommon, deal 3 damage. And finally, Corpse Bloom, the 7/7 for 7 time. Endurance, uncommon Mandrake. I read that all kinds of awkward. Summon, put an enemy unit into its owner's hand. Corrupted 3. All right, back to you, John. What are these 3? I mean, there's some powerful cards here.
Yeah, this is kind of tough. These are all very good cards, I think, in this format. Display being the most flexible but hardest to cast. Corpse Bloom being like a solid finisher in the format. I'm probably, since it's pack one, pick one, I would probably grab this Seer, because basically no matter what, it's going to end up in my deck and it's going to be a useful card.
Okay. Alex, you have anything to add?
It's really hard to pass on that Corpse Boom, as Jed would call it. But yeah, it's the Seer though, so efficient. I'd have to go with that as well.
It is tough. It is really tough because Corpse Boom really does a lot of work. The bounce on it is just huge. The endurance means it can attack and still block. But 7 drops are somewhat interchangeable, even if that one does have slightly unique effect versus, you guys are right, there's so many aggressive cards in this format. You really don't want to lose the game by someone running away with it early. So Seer is the most flexible and can do a lot of things, sometimes even get you a 2-for-1. So I think you're right. I think Seer's probably the safest pick here, not knowing where the rest of the draft goes. It being single fire means it's easier to splash outside of Display and Corpse Boom. Okay, but we have a rare. So our rare is Strange Rider, which absolutely tilts me so hard because I've never seen a card more deserving of flying and not have flying. It's so, like, I can't tell you how many times I kept thinking this card had flying on both sides of the board.
You ain't wrong. Very confusing.
It is. It says Strange Rider, and then it's riding a giant griffin, where the biggest thing in the entire picture is a giant griffin wing. It's like, all right.
And the sky.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Like, what the heck?
Okay. So we have a 2/2 Paladin Stranger at rare for 3 Huru. And it reads, when a player plays a stranger, then draw a relic from the top 6 cards of their deck and bottom the rest. Pay 3 and exhaust Strange Rider. He gets plus attack plus health for your highest relic cost. Okay, John, what do you think of Strange Rider?
I think it's probably pretty good, but I'd rather pick this up later while I'm already kind of in that relic deck. I'm definitely still on the Seer category here.
Alex?
So if it had flying, then maybe I would first pick it.
Right.
But since it doesn't, it's still Seer.
Yeah, there's a little bit, it's kind of honestly a 3-color card when you think about it, because yes, there are some relics in Justice and Primal, but a lot of the good relics are in Time. So by taking it, you're kind of locking in that tri-faction, and then you really, it's okay on its own, but you really want to have a critical mass somewhere between 4 to 6 relics in your deck minimum to increase the chances of it hitting. And so, yeah, I think it's a high risk, high reward card, but I think overall you're still paying 3 for a 2/2 that can whiff. So it's not necessarily even drawing you a card. So yeah, I think Seer is definitely the safest bet here. I know it's kind of unexciting. It's actually a pretty interesting pack because I really don't think I would fault anyone for going with Seer, Biting Winds, Corpse Bloom, and then if you wanted to build it, the Strange Rider, I think. But I think it's really between Corpse Bloom, Seer, and Biting Wind. You guys got any closing statements on this pack?
Good pack.
Good pack, yeah. Hard to pick there.
Yeah, for sure. One other thing I do want to mention, just because it's come up a couple times, I should have mentioned it with the last pack, but there's absolutely nothing wrong with rare drafting, guys. If you want to build your collection and you want to take cards, whether you want to play them in the draft or not, just to save yourself some shift stone, that is 100% all right. Us being drafters, we typically try to go for the highest value card, but I mean, I, for one, unless I have 4 of the legendary, I'm always going to take it, whether I think it's bad or not. So just something to throw out there. All right, so that was Death's pack. Our next pack comes from Wolvig. Wolvig? It's Wolfie. I feel like it's Twitch and Discord is different, but Wolvig. Wolvig? Wolvig. Wolvig. Yeah, we'll go with Wolvie. Okay, so Wolvie, thank you so much for the pack. Let me adjust my zoom here to get this on the screen. All right, cool. So, Alex, starting with you. We have Yeti Cookmaster, 1/1 Yeti Cultist for 2 fire. When you draw a card, Yeti Cookmaster gets +2 attack this turn. Spell Storm Stranger, 1/4 Stranger at common for 3 at primal. When 1 or more strangers attack, their owner's spells deal 1 damage until their next turn. Sky King Storyteller, 2/3 Handcuffing Oni at common for 3 justice. Warcry. Mastery 6, put an 8/8 Sword of the Sky King. Shout out to Gato Sujo for having the #1 rock band title in their recent challenge into your deck. And Contaminating Ritual. This is a fast spell at common for 1 shadow. Give 1 of your units +1 attack, flying, and lifesteal. At the end of the turn, sacrifice it. Of note, it is permanent, so it will die with those abilities should you have a way to recur it. All right, what do you think?
I would be really sad if any of these cards were my first pick, but I would go with the Sky King Storyteller out of these 4. It's probably...
Okay, cool. Yeah, I think it's the most well-rounded card out of all with the potential upside. All right, next up we have Siege Provisions, which we just talked about. Ruinous Blast, we just talked about. Stone Powder Bomber, 5/4 Oni at common for 6 fire. Exalted on your turn. And Burning Core Drake, 3/1 Nightmare Dragon at common for 3 fire. Flying, Reckless, Mastery 9, create and draw 3 treasure troves. John.
I mean, out of these 4, I guess I'm looking at Siege Provisions, but honestly, I'm still looking at that Sky King Storyteller between those 8 commons for first pick.
Okay, all right. I could see Siege Provisions putting a flame up to Sky King Storyteller. That card is pretty good. I actually don't mind having. I think 2 is what I'm comfortable having in my deck because then you can pump 2 different units later in the game. But yeah, I think all the other cards are pretty replaceable.
Yeah, and just like the 2 units there, both have double fire in their cost, which is really bringing them down for a first pick for me.
Okay, at the uncommon level, we have Spellbound Vestige. This is a 2 fire primal relic at uncommon. Your dragons cost 1 less. Your spells deal +1 damage while you have a dragon. So no dragon, no spell damage. Shardbinder, 3/1 mage at uncommon for 2 time. Overwhelm. The first relic ability you spellcraft or activate each turn costs 3 less. I have yet to be able to make the combo with this guy, doing either the Waystone Gate or the Bottle Storm, captured Bottled Storm, something like that. But I do think this card is powerful, and the Overwhelm on a 3/1 is nicer than just a vanilla 3/1. And then finally, all-star here, Water Conjuring. Fast spell uncommon, 3 primal, stun 2 enemy units, decimate, invoke primal. Alex.
I love Water Conjuring a lot, but I've seen the Shard Binder do some crazy things. Like you, I have not been able to get it to go off yet because I haven't seen many of these guys going around. But the tempo plays that you can get for activating things for free is just, it's backbreaking for the opponent. So I think I would pick the Shard Binder here.
Ooh, okay. What about you, John?
Yeah, it's definitely between Conjuring and Shardbinder. Like, I haven't even been getting past any Bottled Storms or Waystone Gates. Like, I haven't seen a single one in any of my drafts. And I'm super high on Water Conjuring, which I have played, and man, is that Invoke sweet. I'm on the Water Conjuring pick here.
Yeah, me too. The tiebreaker for me is A, Water Conjuring draws you a card, and B, Water Conjuring is good by itself for the most part. I mean, obviously you have to have some kind of board presence to really capitalize on it, but it doesn't require any synergies. Having units on the board is what you want to be doing in a limited game anyways. Versus Shardbinder, I've taken a Shardbinder and not seen the relics, or I've taken the relics and not seen a Shardbinder. So, and then, you know, obviously there have been games where you just don't see one part of the combo or the other. So I think between the two, I think Shardbinder is very good, but I think because one is good on as a standalone, the other one is not, that I take Water Conjuring. Cool. Our rare is Destruction Chant. So a strictly better cargo, they fixed the mechanic where you're still going to get your sigil, which I absolutely love that. This is a one-cost spell at rare. Draw a Fire Sigil, Time Sigil, or Shadow Sigil from your deck. Then, if you have, or well, I guess you can decimate it regardless, but if you have double fire, double time, double shadow, you can invoke you can invoke destruction. Oh, that sounds kind of cool. Invoke destruction. I like that. So what this means is you will get any combination of one fire, one time, one shadow card, and there will be a combination of an attachment, a unit, and a spell that you can choose from. And of course, you have accesses to legendaries as well. It does happen sometimes. And you have access to 3 cards that do absolutely nothing for you, which I have seen as well. All right, Alex, going back to you. Does Chant beat out Shardbinder for you?
No, not in this case. It probably doesn't beat out the Water Conjuring, which I don't fault you guys for taking. The Shardbinder would be like an experiment, you know, hope that it works.
Yeah. Well, thanks for being so kind. Yeah. I appreciate that.
I don't think I would take the Chant here.
Yeah, I don't like taking Chants early because if you're not in that specific faction, it could just not pay out the way you want, because you really want them for the invoke later on. John, anything to add?
No, I think you guys basically said it. I'm still on Water Conjuring.
Yep. All right, cool. So Shardbinder or Water Conjuring for pack 3. That was brought to us by Wolvie. Moving on, our next pack is brought to us by Sakarnin, which is a longtime viewer of the show, so really appreciate it. Great brewer as well. And starting off with you, John. Man, I feel... All right, well, we have Siege Provisions again. All right. Urgent Missive. Sacrifice a unit to play to Cultists. This is a fast spell at common for 1 shadow. Sunset Enforcer we talked about, and Stone Powder Bomber.
Yeah, I think that's Siege Provisions in that first row for sure. The rest of those cards are, you know, you want to already be in Fire for Bomber. You want to already be in like maybe Xenon Sack for Enforcer. And then Urgent Missive is just very unexciting and goes with Sunset Enforcer. So that's a Siege Provisions for me.
Yeah, all right, fair. Alex, row 2, we have Fury Blade, the +2/+1 relic weapon at common for 1 fire. We have Book Club Yeti, Fanatical Stranger, and Switchblade Deadeye. 2/1 Elf Unseen for 2 shadow. Switchblade Deadeye has +2/+2 while she has a battle skill.
So this one for me is between the Fury Blade and the Book Club Yeti. It's actually kind of tough. I think I would lean Fury Blade.
Okay.
Here.
John?
Yeah, what Alex just said, and I think I'd lean towards Book Club Yeti.
Okay, cool. Nice. All right, let's see if the uncommons can sway either of you guys. The uncommons, we have Provoke the Dragons. slow spell at uncommon to primal. Deal 2 damage, period. Unit, face, doesn't matter. Your dragons go berserk. Plagued Griffin. You know, I've yet to draft this card. It was one of the things that all stood out to me in the preview season, and I literally have yet to draft this card. Oh man, I don't even think I've seen it in a pack. Anywho, 1/5 Flying Griffin at uncommon for primal. Summon, play Electropy on an enemy unit. Corrupted 6. Electropy is a curse that goes on a unit, and at the end of the opponent's turn, the unit deals 1 damage to them. And Zoltan Arbalist. +1/+4 relic weapon for Justice. It has Warcry. Summon +2 attack this turn, so it attacks as a 3/4 the turn you play it, and then Fate, you gain 1 armor, so it could potentially be up to a 3/5. All right, going back to you, John. Any of these uncommon stand out to you?
Yeah, I think they're all reasonable cards, and I think for me, it's probably between the Arbalest and the Griffin here, and I would go for the Griffin just basically because it's a unit, and there's a lot more good weapons to choose from later, even at the common level. So I think that's kind of like the tiebreaker for me here. So yeah, play Griffin for me.
Mm-hmm. I will say I have been impressed with Zoltan Arbalist. It coming down on 4 is a big difference from 5, and as we mentioned earlier, 3 health is a big stat line in this format, so it actually can kill. It's been more consistently a 2-for-1 than I thought it normally would be at face value, and I think it's just because we were comparing it to the 5 cost 3/4 Mithril Mace, and that 1 turn really does make a difference. Plus you get Warcry out of it, so I definitely could see an argument between the two, but I think I'm with you. Leaning towards they're better weapons in this format, and the Griffin a unit is just great. Alex,
I don't like that the Arbalist announces itself. Your opponent could play around it, and it kind of makes it awkward for you, if they don't play something, because then it'll lose the power the next turn, I'm also on Play Griffin. You haven't drafted this guy. I've had a few of these Griffins in my deck, and yeah, I just got a win yesterday with like 2 of the Electropies on different units, so that's what won me the game. It was a long game.
Yeah,
and it blocks everything, so I mean, other than the giants and stuff, but yeah, I'm on Play Griffin. I like it.
Yeah, I like it too. And then our rare is Creation Chant. So everything that we talked about the previous chant, except it is Fire, Time, Justice. So yeah, I think it's a pretty easy play Griffin here in this pack. So thank you so much once again, Sakarnan, aka Darthenos, for that pack. Our next pack is brought to us by Zeniblade, one of the new members of the Jedi Order, but been a big contributor on the Discord. So thank you so much, Zeniblade. Really appreciate it. And there's already a card I am liking. Actually, 2 cards I'm liking on this. So, Alex, starting off with you, we have Rage Hart Paladin. This is a 4/2 life-stealing Paladin at common for 5 Justice. And health equal to, plus health equal to the highest cost among your relics. So it would always be a 4/2 minimum, but if you have, for example, a 3 cost relic, then it will be a 4/5 for as long as that relic is in play. It is not a summon effect, it is flexible, so if the relic if you play a higher cost relic, or its health will go up, and then obviously if the relic would break, for example, if it's a Bottled Storm and you pop it, then its health would go down. Zoltan Exile we talked about, Fanatical Stranger we talked about, and Blade Crafter. This is a 2/2 Oni at common for 4 fire. Summon, draw a weapon of your choice from your deck. Corrupted 6. Anything, Alex?
So the Paladin's gone up a lot for me, having played the format a little bit now. But the Blade Crafter, I think, with the weapon synergies and relic synergies being so powerful, I think I would probably take the Blade Crafter here.
Yeah, it's funny because both of those kind of almost want to go in the same deck, right? The Blade Crafter is a little more specific to weapons, so it's attachments, which there aren't that many in this format, and then actual relic weapons. And then the Paladin is okay with any kind of relic. But I think I'd rather tutor for the other card and essentially draw a card than to wait for it. So yeah, I think I'm on Blade Crafter as well between the two, but I would like to pick up the relics before I pick up either of these guys. Next up in the second row, we have Sunset Enforcer, Felrock's Infiltrator. This is a 1/1 unseen at common for 3 Shadow, Deadly, Unblockable, and then Mastery 5, Draw one of the top 5 cards of the enemy player's deck, then discard the rest. Unfamiliar Interloper and Biting Winds. John.
Yeah, that's a very easy Biting Winds for me out of all these commons.
Yeah, I think it...
Splashable, great removal spell.
Yep, solid, definitely. Okay, going into our uncommons, we have Plague Griffin, which we talked about. We have Wind Conjuring. This is the Justice fast spell uncommon version of the Conjurings. Ready a unit, it gets +4/+4 and Endurance this turn. Decimate, Invoke Justice. And Edge of Prophecy. This is the +3/+3 relic weapon uncommon for 7 creation, Fire, Time, Justice. But there's more. Summon, double the Edge of Prophecy's attack and health or armor. So when the turn you play it, it is a 6/6. If you're able to recur it, it comes back and you play it as a 12/12. All right, Alex, what do you think, buddy?
I mean, I've seen the Edge of Prophecy get to like 700, 780. No, I'm just kidding, but it can get ridiculous with the recursion and stuff.
I think my record is 36-34, I think right now, or something like that.
Yeah, it's just ridiculous. But that takes a little work to do that. I think on its own, as a first pick, I would take the Conjuring. It's just so good.
Yeah. John?
Yeah, this is these are some very good cards. Like Wind Conjuring and Edge of Prophecy both get a PogChamp for me when I see these and type in Twitch chat. Like these are some very powerful cards. I've been seeing these edges go around, being passed because like it's the kind of card you're only going to want 1 or maximum like 2 of in your deck. So as a first pick, it's definitely an easy Wind Conjuring for me here.
Yep, I'm right there with you. Edge gets passed pretty late because there's specifically one deck in the format that wants it. So, and yeah, you're right. Occasionally you can run 2, but most of the time you just want to run 1 and you want to have all your recursion go on that 1. So,
right.
Yep, Wind Conjuring is the safest one. And then we have our rares, Crack the Earth. This is one of the market cycle of cards for the new Expedition format. This is a fast spell at rare for 1 time. Play a 1/1 cultist. You may swap a card from your hand with a 5-cost card in your black market. Of course, black market, once again, means that the card is only in your black market and is not represented in your deck at all. So yeah, no need to really talk about this. 5 is a decent casting cost to try to put cards in your deck from limited, because obviously those are the ones that you want the least of. So if you have any extra, you could put it in there. But playing 1/1 at fast speed can sometimes intercept, ambush something. It doesn't have ambush, but can sometimes pre-blocks, play it and block something. But yeah, Wind Conjuring is just so much stronger and draws your card. So yeah, pretty easy Wind Conjuring here. Mm-hmm. From the pack, thank you, of Zennyblade. And now our final pack for the Crack Pack segment is from Dizzy Sick. Dizzy Sick is a friend of the channel, came over from YouTube, so thank you so much, Dizzy. Really appreciate it. Great to have you in the order, constantly being an active brewer in the Discord, so thank you so much. Okay, let's go through the whole entire set of uncommons. We have Biting Winds, Token of Purpose, which is Justice Primal Shadow. Triumphant Return. Draw a unit from your void. It gets +2/+2. This is a slow spot common for 3 Shadow. Overlook Spotter is a common elf, 1/3 for 2 Primal. Pledge, and then +3/+3 while the enemy player has 10 or more cards in their void. Ensnare. It's a fast spell at common for 1 Justice. Kill an enemy attacking enemy unit with flying. Fury Blade. Humbug Nest. Play 2 1/1 Humbugs with flying at fast speed for 3 time. Pause for Reflection is a fast spell for 1 time. Put a unit or relic with cost 3 or less into the enemy hand, or owner's hand. You gain 3 life. So of note, you can bounce your units as well. All right, Alex, what commons stand out to you?
The commons that stand out are Biting Wind and Humbug Nest, I guess, and the Fury Blade, and I'm on the Biting Winds. All
right, John?
Yeah, honorable mention too to Triumphant Return, but that's one that you usually only want so many of, and it goes around too. So I think that's Biting Winds for me here.
Yep, same here. I gotta say, if there's anywhere this podcast is planting our flag, is that Biting Winds is good, and this card is still going extremely late for me. I drafted a deck yesterday where I got 6 or 5 of them. I actually could have gone to 6, but I passed it. But I don't know what the critical mass of, like, where's the number where there's too many of them. Anywho, Reborn Master is a 2/3 unseen at uncommon for 2 Argent Port Endurance. Your units with 2 or more battle skills have +1 attack. Awakened Gorger is a 9/9 Nightmare Kirin at uncommon for 6 destruction, right?
Yep.
Fire Time Shadow. At the start of your turn, sacrifice a unit, then you gain 3 health and get 3+3 power this turn. And Earth Conjuring. Oh my gosh, so many conjurings today. Earth Conjuring, fast spell, uncommon, 3 time. Give yourself or a unit plus health equal to the highest health unit in your void. Decimate invoke time. All right, John.
Yeah, these are some very unexciting uncommons, unlike basically every other pack we looked at. Like Gorger is like a payoff for being in the sack deck, and I'm still kind of dubious there. Master would be a speculative pick if you want to go into like the Argenport Unseen kind of aggro deck. And I'm just not very high on Earth Conjuring in general. It's too much work to be good, despite the invoke. I'm still on Biting Winds here.
Now, I will say this. We played, what is it, Onin, the Artisan? What is it? Acclaimed Artisan. We play it all the time, and it's a 2/3 for 3, or 2/3 for 2. So I actually think Reborn Master, even if you're not in the Unseen deck, is still a viable 2-drop. It's one of the things that makes Magnificent Stranger good as well. So I think that's something to consider. Endurance is kind of nice too, because it means it can get in there for chip damage early and still block. So I think it's a little bit higher than most people might rate it, even if it is the whole like unseen synergy thing. But yeah, it probably still isn't going to beat out Biting Winds. Alex?
Yeah, I'm on Biting Winds still.
Okay, so our rare. Alex, you can start us off on this one. This is Bodhi and Rocks. This is another 9/9 giant rare 7 time pledge. At the end of your turn, if you have no cards in your hand, draw Bodhi and Rocks from your deck.
I mean, yeah, 9/9 for 7 doesn't have any kind of evasion. The pledge is nice because, it's in your opening hand. You could play it instead. But just, it like guarantees you drawing gas when you run out of gas. I like this card. This would be my pick.
John?
Yeah, my body is ready. I'd be all over this for a first pick here.
All right, sweet. Well, there you have it. I'm with you guys as well. If you get to the point where you're running out everything, it is a little awkward when you have a combat trick in your hand. But if you know you have Body and Rocks in your hand, then maybe it's one of those things where, or in your deck, that you are going to run out your hand to get it. Of course, it does happen at the end of your turn, so your opponent has at least a turn and a half to kind of prep for it. But sometimes, assuming that you've worn them thin with the rest of their resources, this is going to land and do some damage. So, yep, I think it's solid. It draws you a card, even if the card is itself. So, yeah, I like it. Body and Rocks takes the cake for this pack. All right, guys. Once again, thank you, Dizzy Sick. But that's going to do it for Pack 1, Pick 1. Hope you guys enjoyed that. Let us know in the comments below if you liked or didn't like the extended version of it. But, it's sometimes draft can be intimidating. We hope we do this to help you kind of give you a leg up and have a more clear direction to start off your draft. And, of course, you can always join the Discord and post your Pack 1, Pick 1 there to have the community contribute to what they think your first pick should be. So this takes us into our main topic today, which is going to be our first impressions of Echoes of Eternity. So believe it or not, as you've already probably heard through the grapevine, this is a 3/5 color format because of all the fixing and the fact that they are introducing the second half of the tri-faction combinations for Eternal. So with that, we're going to start off by going down the various archetypes in the format. First off, a personal favorite of mine and what I'm starting to see the most success with is Creation. This is the Fire Time Justice faction, which is focused kind of pseudo around armory, which is using relic weapons to be your removal spells, essentially. Both following up in the curve as cheap as a 1 cost with Fury Blade all the way up to the 7 cost Edge of Prophecy, and I guess to a later extent the 8 cost Sword of the Sky King should you proc that off. But various synergies in here. There is some relic synergies as well, which we'll talk about here in a little bit. But overall, yeah, I think it's personally one of my fan favorite archetypes, but it does have a lot of promise, a lot of value, essentially balancing off those relic weapons to get your 2-for-1s and your virtual card advantage. John, would you like to go into Destruction?
Sure, that's the next Trifaction grouping. It's the Fire, Time, Shadow. The main theme of this grouping is sacrifice and like sacrifice payoffs. This one can be a little more awkward to come together. Your payoffs have to really line up correctly with your sack fodder, and sometimes one or the other doesn't show up all the way while you're drafting. But it's a fun one, and it can be very you can have some success with it too. But I like really enjoy the games where I'm doing this, but I think it's maybe not quite as easy to pull off as like Creation, or we'll talk about in a minute Tradition, for example. But yeah, it's a fun one.
Yeah, it's one of the archetypes that kind of makes you feel smart or witty. You know what I mean?
Right.
You feel like you're clever when you do this, and I think some of the more seasoned drafters are comfortable in this archetype because we were seeing a lot of that in Stone Scar Sacrifice in the previous format. So definitely a very interesting one. Obviously, the key part to this is having things that either pay you off for sacrificing a unit or cards that create more than one unit from one card. Things like Grenadin Drone and Humbug Swarm are things like that, or Humbug Nest. Sorry. All right. Alex, would you like to go into Menace for us, please?
Sure. So Menace is the tricolors of Fire, Primal, and Shadow, which is dragons and spell damage. This archetype is also very fun. Basically, you just get all the flying dragons. Spell damage matters a little bit. There's some sub-themes with that. There's just spells matter stuff a little bit. I had a deck like this that it seemed pretty powerful, but it like leaned in on the dragons and on the relic that makes your dragons cost 1 less, which is, it affects that and the spell damage as well. But yeah, it's I've seen it work pretty good.
Yeah, the one other note of this Trifaction is that it actually has the access to the best removal suite. Between Fire, Primal, and Shadow. That pretty much covers all the really good removal spells in the format. So
True.
That is something to consider. If you're Menace, you have the ability to bridge that early and mid game to the late game where you can deploy your dragons because of all that removal. All right, John, why don't you go ahead and take care of Tradition for us, since it's one of your naturally constructed preferred archetypes.
Yeah, I like Tradition a lot in this format. It's basically like tied with me as far as favorites with the Creation. But so Tradition leans into like a Relics Matter synergy deck. So that's Time, Justice, and Primal. There's a lot of cards in those colors that care about the cost of your relics, and then there's a lot of like actual good relics like that are good on their own. So while you're drafting a deck like this, you can kind of end up in it by accident by just drafting good cards as you're going. Time is really good in this format. And like, yeah, some of the better commons and uncommons go in this deck pretty readily and easily. I think it's a pretty solid archetype.
Yeah, and you hit the nail on the head there. The trick that makes this archetype really solid is the fact that the relics in this format are very good on their own. So You're not sacrificing any power or synergy, or I guess not synergy, but just plain old power level for your deck to accommodate having these relics in it. And I think that's really what sets this archetype apart from its representation in previous formats, is that the relics are surprisingly good. You're not unhappy about having any of them in your deck. So yeah, very good call.
It gives you access to the mythic uncommon wand, which can win games on its own, basically.
Yeah, the wand is those 3 colors, and then also the gate is like
Yep.
an all-star in the format right now.
Yep. Yeah, we'll definitely talk some more on those specific cards here in a little bit. Next up, we have Purpose. Purpose is Justice Primal Shadow, and this once again is Unseen / Curses, or I guess Curses is the sub theme. We're seeing not nearly as many curses now as we did in the previous format, but it is still a part of this archetype. It mainly focuses, the other side of it is the unseen and battle skills. So you have various cards that add battle skills to units and care about various battle skills, and of course curses as well. The uncommon for this one is a little lackluster, but overall the deck has some play to it and it is fun. There are some power at the rare or common level as well as rarity. But yeah, you're pretty much focused on somewhat of an Argenport style aggro that we'll talk about here in a little bit, because that is another archetype. And then you facilitate it with additional cards to play into those sub themes, whether it be curses, attachments, or unseen. Alex, would you like to talk about Elysian for us?
So Elysian or Elysian, whatever. Let's see. Time and Primal combo, and it basically focuses on flyers. It flies, it dies. There's a note in here. Yeah, you have access to a lot of the good flyers. You can gum up the ground pretty good and then swing in with your flyers. It's pretty straightforward. And Time is pretty much the best faction, particularly because of a very common card that everyone plays. So yeah, this is a pretty good deck. But you're very easily splashing another color in there too, and it could be like base Elysian.
Yep, and I should have said that right from the get-go. One last thing about Elysian is the fact that you do have the, what is it, winds? The something winds, coveting winds? I don't remember, but it's the uncommon that essentially is clear, cares about flyers. But much like Alex said, you're gumming up the ground with big bodied or big health units and then allowing your flyers to get in there through evasion. But despite this being a very well fixed, color fixed, influence fixed format, you are still able to draft 2-color decks and be completely happy about it. I've drafted very many 2-color decks with a light 3rd color splash, and sometimes I even just straight up cut the 3rd color out because my deck doesn't need it. And that's actually, I'll just go ahead and mention it now, and we'll talk a bit more in depth later. But there are so many playables. The overall common quality, or the card quality of the commons in this format is so high and so significant that I think I find myself cutting more cards from decks than I do trying to look for playables. And so that also caters to you potentially having a straight, clean, and efficient 2-color deck. Do you guys have anything to add on that portion of it?
No.
Okay. So, John, would you like to go into Argenport for us?
Sure. So I think the Argenport Unseen is like one of the aggro decks in the format. There's when you start getting past some of these uncommons, then you kind of know that lane is going to be available, and I think it's like safe to go into that deck. And it's like it can be a very like good aggro deck in the format from what I've seen. Uncommons like Outcast Elite, for example, is like a sign that's open, as well as Reborn Masters. Like if you keep getting past those, it's probably safe to go into that. The payoffs at common there is like Switchblade Deadeye, as well as an enabler in Entranced Cultist. Like that lets you just kind of start smashing with 4/3 quick draws like very quickly, and you can just kind of win the game before the opponent does anything, because a lot of players are playing this like a very slow format right now. So if this kind of deck comes together for you, you can just steal games pretty easily, I think.
Nice. Yeah, I could definitely see that. Nice call. Next up, we have Rakano. Alex, would you like to talk about that format for us, or that archetype?
So Rakano, that's Fire and Justice. It's like Oni Armory aggro. So you have access to a lot of aggressive units, a lot of the good relic weapons, and yeah, you just smash face, and it's pretty straightforward as well.
Yeah, I think this is like the other kind of obvious aggro deck in the format right now.
Yeah, you take a bunch of low cost units that have higher attack. You're taking things like Mark Maker to give them overwhelming more attack, and using the relic weapons once again, like the creation deck, to utilize as potential 2-for-1s or removal to continue to smash face. And combat tricks obviously are very good here as well, with the inclusion of Acclaimed Artisan that we talked about earlier, which buffs all your Onis.
Even
Right, I've got a deck right now with 4 of those guys in it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Cookmaster
wasn't even planning on it, and then I just keep getting past them. Like, okay, sure.
Yeah, that's a great card for that deck. Even Cookmaster is acceptable in this one.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Next up, we have Felm. This is Primal Shadow, and this format, or this archetype correction, really focuses on the Mills Matters type sub-theme, which it's not necessarily trying to mill your opponent out, but more along the lines of what we started to see hint at in the previous format, where cards care about how many cards are in your opponent's void. So we're seeing some serious payoffs here that reward you for having your opponent having 10 cards or more in their void, and really getting turned on. A 2-drop that becomes a 3/5 or a 3/6, I believe, and then cards do more damage, or they get additional bonuses like a 4/4 that becomes unblockable and has lifesteal when your opponent reaches that threshold. So a nice little take where mill is still viable. You could still incorporate some things like the Siphoner and things like that, and Sunset Priest and Wretched Raven, but you don't have to worry about milling your opponent's entire deck. And then, of course, the talk of the town, the big one here is Strangers. Strangers are back, and we're seeing new Strangers in the Echoes of Eternity packs, as well as old Strangers coming back in the curated packs, both different various lords that buff all your Strangers, as well as your standardized 2-drop fixers. This is anywhere from a 2-color to a 5-color deck. You pretty much just pick the Strangers. The things that really pull you into this are, like I mentioned, the Lord Strangers, the ones that buff all your Strangers. So give all your Strangers charge, give all your Strangers flying, or just buff their stats, +2/+2, etc. I've seen various versions of this. You can also have this as a sub-theme in your deck. So you don't have to be the AKA Strangers deck. You can also be, for example, let's say Tradition with a sub-theme of Strangers to accommodate that, especially if you open one of the Stranger rares. I do also think that there's an aggressive aspect to this deck. I haven't figured out the exact formula, but once again, talking about that previous sub-theme, I picked up a handful of Strangers, had both the flying and the charge one, and kind of went ham on the 2-drops like I normally do. And I was able to get underneath my opponent a couple of times by just going 2-drop, 3-drop, 4-drop, or 2-drop, 2-drop on curve with the charge Stranger, and really get in some extra damage when my opponent was not expecting it. So that is an archetype. Pretty much the open cards that you're always going to see the low power Strangers. The ones that really pull you in are, once again, the ones that buff your entire team, or the rare and legendary ones you see in the Echoes of Eternity packs. John, anything to add on Strangers before you talk about 4 and 5 color good stuff?
No, I think you nailed it on the head. I mean, there is like an inherent risk to going in on these Strangers, but I think if you're really going, especially when you have a bunch of those lords, like as long as you have a critical mass of these guys, you're always going to have a slight advantage over any opponent that's, just incidentally playing Strangers. I definitely think it's a viable archetype.
Okay, cool. And now 4 and 5 color good stuff for us, rounding out the archetypes.
Yeah. So this is like you basically just draft all the awesome cards throughout the packs, and really emphasize tokens and banners and things like that for fixing throughout. And then in packs 2 and 3, like whenever there's not a really good card, you're probably grabbing those 2-drop fixing Strangers. Probably grabbing those pretty highly. 4 color is a very viable archetype in this format. 5 color, I think, is less viable, but it's something you can definitely try and pull off. But I think there's a lot of solid 4 color strategies going on here.
Yeah, I'm with you on that too. I think unless you really get a handful of really powerful cards, I feel like 4 and 5 color good stuff is just a little too slow for this format for these over synergistic decks. Alex, do you have an opinion on it?
I thought maybe we were going to go over it a little bit later, but I guess for this deck, it's you could fall into the trap of like playing too many tokens and just like always being a turn behind basically, and then just kind of get steamrolled by your opponent.
Ooh, very good point. Very good point.
Like I've tried to like keep my tokens at like 4 at a maximum, and I think 3 is maybe a sweet spot on how many you would want.
That sounds right.
Because if you're too much behind, you're going to be a turn behind, and that just costs you games, you know. So
insignias and banners and the fixing strangers are so much more effective at fixing your power or your influence.
Yeah, I'm okay going a little out of sync just to talk about this one while we're here before we move on. So how do you feel about Ancient Manual in this deck, Alex?
I mean, just like in previous formats, like I would want 1, maybe 2. It just depends on how many extra colors I have. Yeah, I don't want too many of those either.
And if you're going for a lot of the more powerful, like double influence cards, like Wind Conjuring, for example, then you're really not going to want any Ancient Manuals because it only gets you the first pip at any given time.
Yeah, it's the closest I've gotten to this deck is I think it was the Argenport deck, if I remember. I think I was like very heavy in Argenport, and then I splashed for a 3rd and 4th color for just power levels. I don't remember specifically. Maybe I had another deck that was greedy. I don't remember, but yeah, it felt a little clunky. I got to play my cards, but it just felt a little like, much like what Alex said. It felt a turn behind of what my opponent was doing. Yes, I was doing more powerful things, but they had me on tempo.
My most successful deck so far, like my easiest 7 wins was 4 color. It was like straight up 4 colors. Like the colors were almost all represented evenly, but I had like, I want to say 6 of the fixing strangers. I had some banners. I had 4 tokens, and like my top end was armory basically with recursion. Like, but I also had some sack synergies. It was like some weird amalgam between the sack deck and the armory deck.
Mm-hmm.
And most of my fodder was just these 2-drop strangers. But like, I also had a lot of like, I had like 2 covetous strangers in there as well, and 1 magnificent stranger. So like, not only were my fixing strangers helping me with card advantage and making my things cheaper, but like I was also using them later in the game to sacrifice for value too. I had like some marsh dragons, and I had the strange burglar, and I mean, it was just all there. Like, it was such an easy 7-win deck.
Nice. All right, cool. I want to try it a little bit and see what happens, how greedy I can get, especially on stream for the entertainment value. I just haven't quite got there yet, which is funny because I actually do value the fixing strangers very highly, regardless of whether I need them or not. All right, guys, that's going to wrap up the archetypes. So overall, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 archetypes in this format. So, and that's one. There's
probably more, honestly. Like I'm sure there's some we haven't seen or discovered or touched on there.
Yeah, because there's plenty of 2-color decks that splash a 3rd color that's not in their trifaction. I've seen that as well. I've probably even done it myself. I just haven't kept track of it. So yeah, I think that's one of the things that really make this format so much fun for all of the drafters, at least the veteran ones I've caught, is that the sky's the limit. You can do absolutely whatever you want in this format, and I think that keeps the replayability and longevity of the format fun.
Yeah, I'm enjoying it a lot.
Okay, so with that, let's go ahead and start off with a light kind of foundation of how to draft the format. This is not going to be talking about any specific archetype. It is more about broad strokes to help you kind of identify how your draft should go in order to build it. And of course, it still takes the normal considerations of units to spells to removal ratio, and curve is still a consideration. There's nothing really too crazy in the format that's made me feel like you can break these rules just yet, minus the fixing. But so typically the way I do it is my first 3 to 4 picks, I'm just taking the highest power level cards from the packs. And reason being is because there's so much fixing and because it can kind of go anywhere, you really want to find out what you're getting past to kind of help you steer the future picks of your deck. So I take my first 4 picks to just take what I think is the strongest card in the pack, as long as it's not too restrictive, right? Taking something with 3 colors is 3 influences is a little risky. But that being said, once we get to pick 3 and 4 is when I start looking for the signpost uncommons or rares. This is where, for example, if you get past an Edge of Prophecy pick 4, there is a 85% chance that here you are not going to be seeing or that archetype is open, and so it is a little safer for you to quote unquote go into that lane, because if anyone was in the armory deck, they would easily have taken Edge of Prophecy, because that is one of the best payoffs. I still like to value removal very highly. I think there are some strong power level cards in here, as well as the rare and legendary strangers. And the conjurings, obviously, with the influx of conjurings, we have the opportunity for higher invokes, which means people can high roll rares and legendaries more as well. So I do value removal, considering that it's a little light, removal light in Echoes. If you notice, Echoes does not have a clean cut get rid of a unit card, and so you have to rely on that to come from the curated packs, which are absolutely huge card pools. So that's my first initial spot as far as drafting this, is kind of staying open for the first couple picks and really look for those signpost uncommons to identify your lane. Alex, what do you have to build on that?
Yeah, I really like what you said about like staying open. I've noticed after like my first 4 picks, it's like spread out over 4 colors, you know, or I'll have 1 3-color card or something like that. And I've really gone into pack 2 feeling really uncomfortable with where I was sitting at because of that staying open. But then the packs tend to fix themselves, and then by the end of pack 4, you end up with multiple playables and cutting cards. I end up in time a lot of times because of this, because of a like late pack, you know, pick 5 or 6 rectifier or something like that, which is a card that, even though it's a common, really strongly leads you into playing time. And I've noticed that there's a lot of 3 drops. Like, I end up having so many 3 drops because of the biting winds, the rectifiers, the conjurings, that it's like it gets really gummed up, and like you end up having to make some cuts out of there. So don't be afraid to like pass on a 3 drop, because you're going to be able to fill that slot, I guess. Be careful with getting cocky with your fixing or getting overconfident that your tokens are going to get you there. I guess generally, yeah.
Yeah, there's something I'll mention after John has his try about the being open all the way through pack 1. But John, go ahead and give us your breakdown as far as how you begin to draft this format and navigate it.
I'm basically right there with what you guys have said as far as staying open, taking the highest power level cards. Like, you really don't want to try and force one of the archetypes out the gate, or you're just going to end up with probably a middling deck at the end of it. You definitely want to watch out for, like you said, specifically after a few picks in, those signposts on commons, especially to identify like an open tri-faction lane. It's easy to see like one of the factions is open, but yeah, man, if you see something like that, you're going to want to solidify your strategy probably a little bit more at that point. There's an abundance of these fixing strangers in the 2 middle packs, so like you don't want to worry too much about like your 2 drops in the first pack, especially with maybe 2 exceptions being the Magnificent and the Covetous Stranger. I think I think those fixing strangers in packs 2 and 3 are literally 12 times boosted as far as their occurrence rate. Like, they show up in droves.
Yep.
So those are pretty easy to come by. Like, solid 3 drops like are very important. Like 3 3s for 3 is a very solid stat line in this format, and like if you're not going greedy with your color requirements, you can actually skimp on the 2 drops I've found in this format, as long as your foundation in the 3s is very solid. And you mentioned unit count. Well, when you're picking just the highest power level cards, you got to be careful halfway through your draft. Definitely check up on your unit count and make sure you're on track to have a reasonable number of playable units by the end. I know I kind of messed that up in my first draft in the format. I was like kind of hurting for playable units. But if you're in like the armory deck, like you can actually have a serviceable deck that's very low on the unit count. Like 10 or 12 units can actually work in that deck.
Oh, wow. Really?
Yes. As long as you have the weapons, like solid, good weapons throughout your curve. they can kind of replace units in some ways there.
Mm-hmm.
So just something to think about. Like that deck, it is kind of okay to end up a little low on the unit count, I feel like. But most of the other ones are more like normal deck, as far as their construction there. And then there are things like spells that make units. There's one in every color at least, right, in the format. Maybe not one at least, but there's plenty of those going around in packs 1 and 4. There's things like Wormstones and like the Stonegate that make units, and other kind of cards that make units. So like, I mean, those count as units while you're building your deck too. So just something to think about there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting that you say that, because I have realized that you can trim on a couple of units in the tradition deck, but man, going down to 10 or 12, I feel like I know with my luck, I would end up drawing 1 3-drop for the entire game, and that's it. But I mean, I believe you're a solid drafter. I know Hats on Lamps is also comfortable with going less units in creation, so it's quite interesting. Go ahead,
yeah,
Alex.
It's kind of weird for your draft brain to wrap your head around, but yeah, it actually works.
Real quick, Alex, sorry. Real quick, for our newer drafters, typically a draft deck wants to sit around somewhere between 17 to 19 units is the sweet spot of where your baseline should be. And this is including cards, much like what John mentioned, that are spells that create units. Things like Wormstone, maybe not so much because there's a little bit of conditions, but things like, for example, Humbug Nest that gives you 2/1/1s. It is a spell, but it's a spell that gives you units, period. And so that you count as units. Other things like Assembly Line and whatnot. Okay, Alex?
Well, I was just going to say that mostly what I've noticed is decks that have time in them, and the best ones being creation and tradition. And there's a lot of crossover in the like relic recursion stuff with those two decks, particularly coming out of the time. So it's really easy to end up in one of those decks and have these cards like Disjunction or the Ascendant or the Excavator. Yeah, that like will bring back your relic, that the Bottled Storm or the Waystone Finder, whatever that one is.
Yeah, Disjunction is a really good card in this format.
It has a lot of use. One way, benefiting you by bringing stuff back or killing their big thing. Yeah, so it's really easy to end up in time. I went back and looked at all my decks at like I got 7 or was close to 7, and like they all have time in them. So I mean, it's not that huge of a sample size, but it's just really easy for me to end up in time.
Okay. Yeah, so real quick on that, one of the things that's something a little more for the veteran or more advanced drafters, which some of the beginner drafters can't work up towards, if you break down the tri-factions and things like that, one of the ways to essentially keep yourself open but still have forethought as far as what you could be drafting, picking cards like, for example, sticking to fire cards or time cards, what this does is you understand the flexibility between it. So for example, let's say you draft a Stone Scar deck, right? You're drafting fire and shadow primarily. Then later on in the draft, you have access to either play time for destruction or play primal for menace. And so you are still, it's one of those things where you're drafting 2-color, but you're still leaving yourself kind of open and identifying that, hey, those are the options. So you may not want to value cards in Justice just because you start to narrow off your flexibility in that kind of color pairing. It doesn't mean don't do it. It's just, once again, something for the more advanced players. And that's one of the things that also leads time, much like you guys both said, to being so powerful, is that it goes in 3 different archetypes that kind of overlap together. And so because of that, time is able to have some of the strongest commons as well and uncommons, as well as being one of the more flexible factions to be in multiple archetypes. So that's, I think, some of the strength to this. And now
there's a lot of cross synergies there that like John mentioned with his 4-color deck,
Yep. Yeah, exactly. The other thing I wanted to mention I talked about earlier, as far as if you find yourself not identifying a lane in pack 1, which it happens. Sometimes the person packaging to you is just the cards they've picked doesn't really send a clear signal, or maybe they're new to the draft format and they don't necessarily know what they're doing or whatnot. All kinds of reasons. Plenty of us have gone through it and just they're like, hey, I have no idea where I'm supposed to be. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm in Felon. I'm like, why am I getting this Justice card super late? So
the packs can just be weird
too. Yeah, that too. Yeah, completely. So with that, if you find yourself being completely open in pack 1, which is fine, I know it's a little unnerving to some of us, but it's actually okay, because you're going to get packs 2 and 3 passed entirely from a different player or different sets of players. And so what I tend to do when we come to this scenario where I'm completely open in pack 1, when I go to pack 2, I use pack 2 to solidify where my deck is going and kind of make a note of what cards I got passed late in pack 1, being like, okay, I for sure think Justice is open pack 1. So what goes well? Okay, cool. Onis is open. Okay, we'll try Rakano here. And you try to round out your decks by pack 2 and 3, and then you're only making a handful of picks in pack 4 to finish off your deck. Versus sometimes what ends up happening is if you're locked into a color in pack 1, you're like, oh yeah, for sure, we're the Armory deck. That's what we're doing. So then you draft all the Armory synergy cards in pack 1, pack 2 and 3 you use to supplement that, but you're not really worried about it because you're going to finish off getting the payoffs in pack 4, if that makes sense. So that is something to consider if you are completely open and kind of don't have a direction at the end of pack 1. John, have you experienced anything like that at all?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Yeah. There's so much going on in this format, and there's so many like viable directions. Like even if you think you're solidly in one thing coming out of pack 1, you still need to see where packs 2 and 3 are open, and that might just point you in that other direction. Like, yeah, a lot of great points, guys.
Okay.
There's a lot of first picks that have ended up in my board, basically.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's like you said, it's unnerving, but after pack 2, you can solidify where you're going.
Yeah, it's very much a very disciplined inducing format, being like, look, I just can't play this, or yeah, it can fit my deck. Like I said, there have been times where I've been 3 colors and I had some powerful cards to splash. I easily justify those splashes to anyone, but then we look, it's like, why bother making your deck less consistent when you have a perfectly fine 2-color deck? So okay, let's break down some specific cards now in our feel for the format. So we're going to be doing a slightly more in depth about specific cards and how we feel about them to help you identify whether you want to put them in your deck or even draft them during the process. Cards I feel like are not 100% solidified. Yes, this card is awesome. Like obviously Rectifier. If you can play 3 Rectifiers, play 3 Rectifiers. They go great in every deck. Even if it's your splash card, it's fine because sometimes there's a big dragon or a rare that you want to silence later in the game. So nothing big there. So first off, we're going to go ahead and talk about public enemy number 1, which is Magnificent Stranger. Now, this might be, some of you might be like, what are you talking about? This card is awesome. It is awesome. I'm not going to deny that. The issue I have with the card, as much as you guys have heard me rant before, is that by putting it in your deck, you're not only upping your deck's power level, but you're also at the chance of upping your opponent's power level of their deck. All the strangers in this format have asymmetrical effects where both anyone that plays a stranger gets benefit from it or attacks with a stranger. And symmetrical. Thank you. Yeah. Appreciate that. I know it sounded wrong, but I was just rolling with the punches. Yes, symmetrical. Thank you. Okay.
The other one.
So the thing I have with Magnificent Stranger is it has happened to me, and you guys can let me know if it doesn't happen to you or not, but I've had times where I've played the Magnificent Stranger and my opponent plays a 3/3 or does something, or they give one of their units, one of their strangers flying, and then they get more triggers off of the Magnificent Stranger than I do. Or even they're just in the play and they have a 2/2 stranger. So when I play mine, they have the option of attacking first. And so despite it being a fantastic card, I am a little hesitant to put it in my deck sometimes based on how aggressive I think my deck is or not. Where do you sit on this, John?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a double-edged sword. I love getting the benefit from my opponent's Magnificent Stranger. I think like one important thing to do if you're including this in your deck is you want to be able to capitalize on it while jamming up your opponent from doing so, right? So you really want to have some solid stuff in the 3 category, like 3/3s for 3, like in abundance, to be super confident about playing this guy. You also want to have some solid, higher cost cards that you're like actively trying to reduce the cost on, especially ones that you want to recur. For example, the Edge of Prophecy, like if you can get a cost reduction on that, and I mean obviously your deck is probably planning to recur that too, like it keeps that cost reduction through all the zones. Like that is a huge payoff for trying to play this guy. So I don't think you just want to willy-nilly just jam him in every deck. I mean, that being said, it is just a solid body with only 1 influence color for 2. But like I see people trying to first pick this guy when there's like clearly more powerful cards in the pack and things like that, and I think that's not correct.
Yeah, that's actually my second point on Magnificent Stranger, is because this guy is the strongest when you play him on 2, it really forces people to go time. They're like, oh, there's a Magnificent Stranger, I guess we're time. And like there's so many other reasons to go time as well, that, and maybe it's the streamer in me where I try to show different decks, so I try not to always go in time. Don't get me wrong, if you get 2-3 Magnificent Strangers and Rectifiers, yeah, sure, your time. But it's people pick 2, they're like, oh, Stranger, I'm taking it, and then they think they're time for the rest of the draft. And sometimes that can really train wreck your draft essentially, or just you might end up missing the 100% correct lane by taking the 70% correct lane. So
correct.
With that, let's go into the other side of this as well, which is Covetous Stranger. This is the 2/1 Stranger that gives, whenever a Stranger attacks, the owner gets a treasure trove. Obviously, I've seen a lot of people be very high on this guy because of the fact that you're okay just playing it on 2 and then suiciding it into draw a card. I personally don't think that's great because you're still losing tempo and having to pay extra power to draw that card. Once again, the benefit, max ceiling, if you're able to somehow continue attacking with a Stranger, you're drawing an extra card every turn, then you're living, on cloud 9. But there, once again, much like Magnificent Stranger, there's times where you play this, you're unable to attack, and then your opponent is able to keep reaping the benefits. And that is why I am one of the people that I'm firmly in the camp of, I'd rather take all the neutral Strangers I can and capitalize on my opponent playing all these rare and uncommon Strangers. But once again, I have been known to play both of these in my deck sometimes. Alex, where do you sit on Covetous Stranger and Magnificent Stranger?
So I think they're very good cards. I like them. The Strangers have been awkward for me, like trying to figure out how to play with and against these guys. On the play, I like playing the Magnificent Stranger or the Covetous Stranger, the actual card, on turn 2 if I can. If I'm on the draw, I like my opponent to play theirs first. Like I'd rather play my neutral Stranger on turn 2 and then maybe get a trigger on turn 3 by playing the Magnificent Stranger, and then hopefully that one can block their attack. So like if they're gonna do it, they're gonna sacrifice a guy basically to get the trigger. I like the 2/3 body for 2. It might be a little overrated, but I still think it's a good body. And then the 2/1 Covetous Stranger, I don't like that one as much unless you're ultra aggressive deck, that constantly keep drawing gas. Like if you have a lot of removal for little things and just keep getting in, like you said. But yeah, the Strangers, I really like getting triggers off my opponent's things more. And I tend to have had the same experience where they have gotten more triggers than I have, with my stuff.
Yep. All right, cool. I think that's enough. I'm sure we'll continue to have this conversation over the course of the format. Moving on, we have Pillar of Creation. This is a 2-cost Justice Time relic that gives you +1 maximum power, so essentially a power stone, but then it has additional end of text that whenever you play a relic weapon, it gets +1 attack. So this card seems like a very good card for the creation deck. or in general. I mean, I guess you're fine just using it for the ramp, but obviously you want to use it in cohesion with the relic weapons to get the additional attack, which does make a difference. I've seen them definitely make a difference. That +1 attack allowing you to kill, bumping a lot of these weapons that have 3 attack to 4, like we talked about plenty of times already, makes a huge stat line difference. But what I've personally come to realize is that because in the late game it doesn't do anything for you, essentially it's somewhat of a do nothing. Somewhat. I know it still has some application, and it triggers relic synergies, etc., etc. I actually find myself cutting Pillar of Creation quite a bit from my deck because of the fact that going into a relic archetype means that where you would normally have just an even split of units and spells / relics attachments, when you're in the relic deck, you tend to take the relics a little higher. So now you have spells and relics and units, and so you end up having less room for playables, and I just end up cutting it a lot. So Alex, where are you at on Pillar of Creation?
I'm not a huge fan of that card even from the beginning. I think the relic weapons that you're playing, they're like powerful enough on their own, and then getting to them a little bit quicker is okay, I guess, but it's like so specific that it's affecting like 4 cards in your deck. So I don't like that card too much.
Yep. John, anything to add?
I think Alex said it great in the set review when he said he'd rather have his early game ramp be on units, and I totally agree with that at this point in the format. I think the ramp cards that you actually want to play in this format are Ancestral Oasis, and then the is it Power Stone? The thing that comes off of the 1/2 flying
core, Power Core, Eternity Core, Eternity Core.
Thank you. Yeah, Eternity Core. So like I think if you're trying to ramp, those are the cards you're looking for, and not really Pillar of Creation for the most part. Another better way to do that is with Stonegate. I know that's not ramp, but I mean that just makes it so much easier to hit your power drops every turn, which in limited can feel like ramp, but even though it's definitely not.
Yep. Okay, cool. Moving on, we have the Unseen overall as an archetype. I've drafted the Unseen deck twice now, but I will admit I dove into the whole battle skills thing. Part of it is because one of the decks I had 2 Unseen Executions, which is the rare 6 double Argent Port. Kill each unit with fewer than 2 battle skills. And I had 2 of the Outcast Elites that gave everything battle skills, and I had 2 of the Stranger, I forgot what it's called now, the 1/3 that gives battle skills to the top of your deck. So I went ham on that deck, and sometimes it did its thing and worked great, and sometimes it was just a little too clunky. So, and then the second time it was similar, not as efficient, but it was still there, and I felt like it just didn't quite get there. But obviously Alex or John, like you mentioned earlier, I think there's a good chance I was drafting the deck wrong, and I should have just dove into the aggressive side of it like you were talking about. And I feel like that could have a little more benefit. So do you have want to elaborate a little bit on that?
I basically said it earlier when we were talking about the archetypes. Like I think the better Unseen deck is like very Argent Port, and it's very aggressive. Like in that deck, maybe you still play one of those Unseen Executions, right? But like I think the deck you were trying to build there was more of like a late game kind of version of that deck. And I just don't think, like, you just have to high roll some evasion in that case to actually get your damage in later.
Yeah.
Whereas the aggro deck is just going to be hitting early and hitting often. And like, I just think, I think the game plan is really important for that deck to be effective. I think you really need to be aggressive. And I think you didn't even mention 2 of the best cards in that deck, which are and that cultist I talked about, the entranced cultist.
Yeah, and they give the quick draw, 1 cost quick draw.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's weird though, because like for example, the second time I drafted, I had 3 Denouncers, which is the Argent Port 5 cost unit that has flying and revenge. So there's 2 battle skills, and then 2 of the Back Alley Informant, the 1/4 unblockable endurance Tauren. Minotaur. So I mean, I thought I had the deck, and but you're right. I think because I wasn't able to push in damage early, I just gave my opponent too much time to set up.
Yeah, again, those cards like go in more of like a mid-range or control-y version of that deck, and I don't know that that's actually a good deck in the format. like that one, you're gonna like maybe it would work out in that case if you're able to stabilize early and then always hit that unseen execution like you mentioned. But yeah, I think I think on average you're gonna want this to be like Argenport aggro.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Alex, anything to add?
No, I haven't drafted that deck yet.
Have you played against it at all?
Yeah, a little bit, and I've lost to it even just against high rolls on the abilities. You know, that'll just get you every time.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, you get like unblockable double damage or something, and it's just like, oh yeah.
Yeah, like exalted and deadly. You know, whatever.
GG easy.
Yep. Okay, John, this is actually, Alex, let's go ahead and stay on you because this is a card you were very high on right off the bat. I think we all are, but I still, man, like I just mentioned earlier, I'm seeing this card go by so late, and that's Biting Wind. I think it's a very solid card. Alex, what's up, man? Like, what do you think?
I'll keep picking them up, you know? Like you said, you passed on the 6th one yesterday, and you had 5 in your deck.
Mm-hmm. I mean,
you know, where like you're gonna have 3 up later in the game, and it takes out these big relic weapons that are coming at you. It's just a really good card.
Yeah, John, do you think it's just because some people feel like it's too easy to telegraph? Is that why you think it's going so late and people are not valuing it?
Not really. I think people are more just apprehensive about going into Primal because of like all the last draft formats more than anything probably. It's like just fear of Primal. Like it's been the joke of the format for quite a few formats in a row now. So yeah,
but that's the thing about Biting Winds. You don't even have to be Primal. It's one Primal and it's a removal spell, it's so you're okay having it later.
I agree. And like literally the fact that it can take out an Edge of Prophecy or a Shugo's Hooked Sword like makes it a hugely powerful card in this format, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like it takes out the Hook Sword without it even making an Oni. Like, and it deals with all but the biggest units. Like, I think it's super good in the format.
Yep. I think it's great too. Yeah. All right. Well, I guess if people are going to continue to sleep on it, then we as a group will continue to pick it up.
Yeah.
Next up, we have Siege Provisions, which is the 2-cost relic weapon we talked about earlier that when you play it, you can Spellcraft Endure, but mainly it's the pay 3 to give a unit +2/+2 and endurance for the turn. This card was medium, and it's actually overperformed for me. Farming Eternal does a great breakdown of this card as well as Cassandra Thai's stream. The fact that it gives the unit endurance, so you could swing and still have a blocker back. The fact that it could make it, the +2/+2 makes it to where your unit is just slightly bigger and maybe force a double block. And it just, this, you know, the Endure helps you get mastery triggers off of it. It triggers relic synergies. So this card, I still don't think it's a bomb. It's not like I'm windmill slamming first picking it, but this card is overperformed. And like I said, I'm perfectly fine having 2 of these in my deck. Alex, have you got anything for Siege Provisions?
Just like you, it's gone up a lot. I'm sure it's rated lower in the set review than I would do at the end of the format. But yeah, I'm like one or 2, you know, maybe I'm okay with just 1, but I do like double triggering later in the game. But yeah, it's a good card. It goes good with, I don't think it's on the list, but the Rage Hart Paladin, Rage Hart 4/2 lifesteal. So that makes it a 4/4 lifesteal that you can like swing in, make it bigger every turn, then you have the lifesteal blocker back every turn. It's which is another card that's gone up for me. But yeah, though it's a solid card.
Yep.
Yeah, that's one I was very skeptical on when we did the set review because cards like this in the past have underperformed for me. But no, I'm with you guys. This one has outperformed my expectations for it. I definitely would want one in basically any Justice deck I'm running. They're kind of redundant though, so I don't know like how much I want that second one, but yeah, that first one, it's overperformed, like you said. Yeah,
it's the other thing too is that being Justice also goes into the Tradition Trifaction, which means you're Elysium, which means you have flyers. So +2/+2 and endurance on your flyers is really solid as well. Okay, next up we have Unburial Rites, and this one doesn't need too much of explanation. We already knew that it wasn't going to be great, but I thought it was going to be fantastic in board stalls where you have, somewhere between 6 to 10 units. Your opponent has 6 to 10 units. You play this, you get rid of 6 to 5 of their units, and then yes, they're keeping their 2 best units, but you can kind of get around them. Honestly, there's too many times I've experimented and forced putting it in my decks, and it either underperformed every time, or I just would have rather drawn anything else in my deck. So I'm off of Unburial Rites. Either of you guys have anything else to add to it?
I mean, I think we were right on point, probably in our set review.
Yeah,
like, it's just so swingy as far as whether it's good or bad, and it's not really up to you.
Yeah. Okay, moving on. This is one that's been the talk of the town, probably in contention for one of the top cards in the set. This is Stonegate. It's a 3-cost relic, and then you could pay 3 to go fetch a sigil of your choice from your deck, and you can activate this as many times as you want in one turn. Upon the completion of the 3rd activation, it will break, going to your void, and then give you an 8/8. So it's an entomb that gives you an 8/8, but it has to be on your turn. So if your opponent breaks it on their turn, you will not get the 8/8, just something. This card is absolutely fantastic. I was a little reserved about it because of what's happened to me a couple of times, but not nearly often enough to put me off of this card, is where if my opponent is putting enough pressure on me, I do not have the ability to just take a turn off or take half my turn off to play to pay the 3 to go get power. That being, and then it just kind of sits there. That being said, if my opponent is not applying any kind of pressure or even light pressure, like 1 or 2 damage a turn, I easily just play this, then activate, and then activate, and get an 8/8, and you're just swinting pretty. Heaven forbid you should get this thing back from the void and do it all over again, and then you don't need any power for the rest of the game. And yeah, so John.
Yeah, I tried to convince you in the set review that this was going to be good. And I think I brought you up on it a little, but I think now that you've gotten to play with it, right, like you've seen the truth on this one. Like it's really good. Getting those powers out of your deck and making sure you hit your power drops is great. And then the fact that you just get an 8/8 is so sweet. And like, how many times, right, do you end up recurring the thing from your graveyard, whether with a disjunction or like a turn back time, right? Like that's like a good play. It feels good when you do it. You get even more power out of your deck. Oh man, this is like a solid card.
Yeah, this card has won me the game by itself plenty of times, for sure. But like I said, the reason why I was down on it has happened to me before, where my opponent is just smashing in the face and Stonegate looks pretty horrible. So Alex, you have anything to add about Stonegate, buddy?
I mean, everything you guys said. It's great to recur it and then thin your deck out of more power, and it like you just draw gas. It's great.
Okay, so Alex, moving on. Tell us about turn back time, buddy. Where are you at on this guy?
So yeah, this card has gone up for me a lot.
I told you.
with the recursion of all the relics, the relic weapons. Yeah, it's just the format is slow enough where you can do shenanigans with this card.
Oh, sorry, real quick. Turn back time is a 3-cost slow spell that lets you get back anything from your void, from power to relic weapon to spell to unit, and then it gets void bound. Sorry, go ahead, Alex. Continue.
Yeah, no, I mean, I guess that would be the only downfall, is that it gets void bound. So like maybe try to use this as your last recursion card,
right?
So time it right with that, unless you have to, But yep, it's a good card.
Anything to add, John?
No, like I tried to convince you guys in the set review that this was going to be very good in a lot of decks, and I think it's turned out maybe even better than I thought. Like,
I'll admit that I was wrong. It is better than you even try to convince me of.
I've even gone up on this probably myself. Like, it's so good in both the creation and the tradition decks. Like, oof.
Even in Xenon, like, it's just good.
Yeah.
The fact that it gets back anything is just great, because it's always going to be the best card in your void.
Right.
All right.
Yeah, it's real good.
What's the max limit that you wanted these in your deck, John?
I think, especially if you're in those decks with those Waystone Gates and like Edges of Prophecy, I think you'd rather have a disjunction, in place of one of these or whatever in those cases. But I think like around 2 is like a very, very solid sweet spot when you've got those payoff cards.
Okay, cool. All right, next up we have a Spore Spitter. This is a card I'm still low on, but I have had some trouble against it from time to time. I think actually I still won the game where they went off on it. I don't remember now. But Spore Spitter is a 6-cost 4/4 that when your opponent has more than 10 cards in their void, it gets unblockable and lifesteal. John, where are you at on Spore Spitter?
Yeah, I think I was pretty skeptical on this one in the set review, and I've come up a little bit. Like, I've had my opponent, get to that 10 card threshold in a few games where they weren't even milling. Just, aggressively trading strangers in the early stages of the game, or if like I, happen to be on some kind of sacrifice deck, you can end up like just helping them get there, like, just by doing your deck's thing in those cases. So I think this is a real finisher. For especially a Feln, Mill Matters deck. But yeah, that's pretty. I've come up on this a little bit for sure.
Of note, real quick, it does have pledge too. So I don't know. I just feel like there's so much stuff to be doing at 6 in this format that I've had a hard time wanting to play it. But yeah, I think I've come up a little bit. The card can finish off a game if your opponent doesn't, because it requires a specific answer. Right, once you get unblockable, you can't race it because it has lifesteal. So there is some benefit to it for sure. But if you're playing it on curve, you feel very lackluster because there's only 3 things in your opponent's void at best, and you're playing a 4/4 on turn 6 when they're playing, a 7/7 or all kinds of things. So
like a 4/4 that can't even attack or block well at that point because you don't have the threshold yet. So it's really.
I think it's. It's as a pledge card. I think you're almost always going to pledge this in your opening hand, unless you're staring at 2 Malaises, right? Yeah.
Actually, you know what? I take that back. I'm not higher on it. I'm actually probably about the same as I was. No, because I'm thinking, I'm like, I've had times to pick it, and even late, I've almost taken anything else because it's. Like I said, I think the time that we did have a stalled board state and my opponent was able to bash with this thing, I think I still beat it somehow. I don't remember. I think I was able to bounce it or silence
one rectifier,
it. Yeah,
one rectifier in your hand, and your opponent's gonna have a bad time when they play this card.
Yeah. So yeah, it's just still something like if you need a top end for your deck, sure, but I'm very reluctant to include it. Okay, the last card we're gonna be talking about is Eremot's Machinations. This is a 5-cost Xenon slow spell at uncommon. Play a 1-cost unit, a 2-cost unit, a 3-cost unit from your void. They get +1/+1 and overwhelm. So first off, let's just say that this card is still good, even if you do not have a 1-cost unit to get it into play, because of the fact that you are still playing a 2 and 3-cost unit for 5, which is fair. It's playing it, so it comes directly into play, and they're getting upgrades. John, where are you at on Eremot's Machinations?
I think this card has definitely been like as good or better than my initial impression of it. Basically every time I've seen it played, it can be kind of backbreaking, when you finally like clear their board and then they're just like, boom, three good units in your face. It's been pretty good. That being said, like in that deck I mentioned earlier, I had a chance to play this influence wise, and I actually had to cut it because that deck was like mostly 2-drops, and so there was going to be a lot of times where I'd have this in my hand and it would only get back a 2-drop, and then in that case it's not going to be good basically ever. But I think there's a lot of decks that can really get a lot of value from this card in the format.
Yeah, especially if it's cards that have killer and deadly and any kind of things like that, for sure.
Yeah, or just Nahid's Faithful is like a super good 1-drop to bring back, because you also like can make it even bigger the second time you summon it.
Oof. Broken.
Yep.
Yeah.
Where are you at on Machinations there, Alex?
Yeah, it's still good. I mean, you can kind of tell when your opponent's like, you're like, oh, they got a Machinations for sure. Like, they're just trading all crazy. But had opponents message me after me like, I was playing into my Eremot's Machinations. I was like, yeah, I figured that's what you had.
Yeah, when you're like, why are they trading that? All right. Okay, cool, guys. Well, that's going to do it for our feel of the format. Is there anything else, any specific cards you guys want to talk about before we go into our next segment? Anything you want to mention about any kind of decks or anything like that?
Now we covered everything I wanted to talk about.
Yep.
Okay, cool. So our next segment, and one last thing to kind of wrap things up in a nice little package for you all. We're going to do our favored or dirty rat, or our hot or not segment. Try something a little new. What I'm going to do is fire off some cards, and you guys are going to tell me whether they're favored or whether they're dirty rats. And just kind of a point blank grade, like hit or miss, yes or no type thing. That way you guys have a better understanding on these cards that we don't need to go into further in depth until we do it in further episodes. So, are you guys ready for my little game?
Let's go.
Yeah, I'm excited.
All right, so Humbug Nest, favored or dirty rat?
Favored.
Favored.
Mithril Mace.
Dirty rat.
Favored.
Ooh, Mark Maker.
Favored.
Favored.
Blade Crafter.
Favored.
Favored.
Shard Binder.
Favored.
Definitely favored.
Fall Short.
Dirty rat.
You dirty rat.
Triumphant Return.
Favored.
Dirty rat.
You guys really milked that whole like right away first thing that comes to mind, and
That
also
one's so in the middle.
plus it also sounded like you were both performing bodily functions, but we'll call that.
Sorry.
It's kind of funny. You both mimicked each other. I was like, all right. And finally, Rage Hart Paladin.
Favored.
Favored.
And you know what? Bonus round, Eviscerate.
Super favored.
Always favored.
All right, cool. All right, that's going to do it for our first impressions of Echoes of Eternity. Overall, I think it's a super fun set. They really hit it out of the ballpark here. I'm enjoying drafting this so much. And man, I'm really trying to explore things, especially on stream. And sometimes you can definitely identify the open lane, and sometimes you're not happy about it. But overall, I've really been enjoying it. I still think creation is my sweet spot personally. And I think it's one of the stronger color combinations. But yeah, I like it. What about you guys?
I'm right there with you. Still experimenting, but creation is definitely one of my favorites.
I think tradition is more my speed. I'm kind of already, it's barely like 2.5 weeks and I'm already sick of strangers. And I'm already sick of recursion. I'm not going to stop doing it, but it's like, it's already getting old for me.
Yeah, I can understand that.
Like every deck is doing it, you know? So it's like, ugh.
Yeah, fair. It's definitely things that maybe next time we'll do a breakdown of the displays. I would definitely like to do that because I don't think all displays are created equal for sure. So
For sure.
that might be something we do in the next episode. All right, guys, that's going to do it for Echoes of Eternity, which leads us into not Construct the Corner. Sorry, I skipped ahead. What's the play? There we go. So what's the play? Of course, you can check it out on screen if you're watching us on YouTube. I'm going to break it down. This one's actually, for the most part, not necessarily it's straightforward, but there is a discussion to be had about it. And I screenshotted this one because it was a very popular stream. I think we had about 300 people on it, and it was a very torn decision on what we should do here. The interesting thing is because there's not a wrong decision, it's just a preference. So I figured we'd rather talk about it. Even when John and I mentioned it a little bit pre-show, there was a bit of discussion. So real quick, it is my opponent's at 5 life. We are at 24. Our opponent doesn't have any power open, and we have 6 of 6. On the board, opponent has a 2/5 Sirocco Glider, not flying, and a 5/6 Thunderstrike Dragon with another one in hand. They've only played the first one this turn. We have a silenced 2/2 Dragon Whelp, the 3/3 Charge Stranger, so give all strangers charge, and the 3/4 Overwhelm Vorlunk. Our hand consists of a Sirocco Glider, a Fire Sigil we can still play, a Treasure Trove, so pay 2, draw 1, and a Stonescar Stranger. The 2/2 for 2 gives you Fire and Shadow influence. So I'll go ahead and make this pretty easy on everyone. The play here is to deploy the Stranger and attack. And taking our opponent, they'll have to block. They'll block the 3/3 Stranger and the 3/4 Vorlunk and take 4, going down to 1. We will potentially lose either the Stranger or the Vorlunk in the process. And that's pretty easy there. The difference here is the fact that we have other Strangers in our deck. I don't remember the specific number, but we had slightly higher than usual Stranger count in our deck. So this was the deck that I won 2 games off of early Stranger aggression with either the Flying One or the Charge Stranger. The discussion point here is whether we play the Stranger and then draw a card to potentially draw another Stranger to kill our opponent this turn, or to play the Stranger, swing in, lose a guy, take them down to 1, and then deploy the Sirocco Glider. We can go up to 7 power, so we're only able to do one or the other. We can't do both. And that's the discussion point, because a lot of people felt it was an easy draw another card because you have a chance of finishing the game this turn and not giving our opponent another draw. And another pool was where I landed at, which was the 1 in the hand is worth 2 in the bush, where I did not draw and instead rather further develop my board, putting the Sirocco Glider in play, still giving my opponent 3 units to potentially deal with. So, where are you at, John?
Yeah, I am with you on this one completely. Like, I don't want to just risk the draw here when they're only going to be able to eat one of your units. And like, we know one of their cards in hand is another 5/6 flyer, and that would take up their whole turn. I feel like if they had a bunch of other units, they probably would have already played them out. So I'm thinking like they're top decking, and so are you. I'd rather have a guaranteed 4 units to swing in next turn, and I would play the Sirocco Glider here as opposed to cross my fingers and hope to draw a Stranger off the top.
Well, hold on, because before this you would have drawn a card. So what changed?
No, this is what I decided when we were discussing it pre-show as well.
Okay, well, for sake of argument, just to show the other side of it, what was your other thought process prior to landing on this decision?
Well, I definitely asked, how many, what's your Stranger count like? You mentioned the Flying One. Well, that's a 4 drop, so you're not going to be able to play that one, for example, even if you draw it here. It's basically got to be one of these 2-drop Strangers.
Mm-hmm.
And like, once you realize that they're only going to actually be able to eat your 3/3 Charge Stranger when you attack with all, so you're already just up as far as the unit count. Like, I think the chances are very good with all that I said there that they're not going to be able to spam the board with extra units here, just from what I've seen and what I can tell has been happening here. So no, I would much rather just go for the sure thing here, basically, and play the Glider out.
Okay, now one question though, because actually you brought up a good point, considering that I also have the Flying Stranger in my deck. So what about drawing a card first and seeing if it's a Flying Stranger? Because if it's a Flying Stranger, then I just win.
It's true, but I mean,
that's Stranger. You just win.
Yeah, if it's any
yeah,
I guess
true.
That's true. I mean, you're just rolling the dice here when you've already got that second unit in your hand.
Yeah.
And that's basically a sure thing from what I'm seeing from, analyzing the opponent's hand and whatnot. Like,
yeah.
Your life total here, you don't need to do it. You're not going to die on a backswing. So you can be patient and do the sure route. If you were desperate, you would draw the card, if you're going to die next turn.
Yeah, that's for sure. Like, if you were going to die on a crackback from this Thunderstrike Dragon, well, you got to win this turn, and then you easily go for the draw. But yeah, you're sitting pretty here with your life total.
Fair.
Yeah, there's no reason to get aggressive. I mean, and
Yeah, go ahead, break it down your side of it, Alex. Might as well.
I was just going to say, like, how much direct damage do you have, or spells that affect combat is something to consider. But,
that's another question I asked Jedi before. It was like, what kind of reach is in your deck?
Shout out to Extinction, your opponent. Let's see here.
Yep.
Um,
Okay. So yeah, you're kind of on the same boat as we are, playing the
Yep.
safe but sure route.
yes.
All right. Cool. All right. I thought there was gonna be a little more argument. Maybe not necessarily between us, because I think we do a pretty good job of taking other sides, but we get along. I mean, sometimes it's just the right play is the right play.
Because newer player might think they need to like just go for the win regardless of the board state and their life, but yeah, you don't necessarily need to do that, you know.
Mhm. Yeah, and much like what John said, we have an idea of one of their potential plays next turn is just to play the other dragon, which we win if we do, So to change the board state, they have to do something other than that. So like I said, it really was in the Discord, or not in the Discord, in Twitch chat. For sure, I thought it was a handful of people said I should have automatically drawn a card, so that was interesting. But like I said, yeah. I ended up not drawing the card. I played the Stranger, swung, and then post combat deployed the Circle Glider to lock it up. And sure enough, it's what they didn't have anything to affect that, and we took it down. But okay, cool. Just something.
Did you see what your next draw was after the game or anything?
I mean, I had to, because we had to kill him the following turn, I think. But
well, maybe they conceded before your draw. Yeah, if they were just dead.
Yeah, I don't necessarily remember, to be completely honest with you.
Okay, no worries.
But all right, guys. Yep. But all right, guys, that's gonna do it for our what's the play? That's our what's the play for the week. A simple one, but I'll make a point to be a little bit better. I always have pretty interesting plays that we talk and break down and talk. I just have to remember to screenshot them during the stream to do it. There was actually a really sweet game I played against, I don't know, someone I don't know in offline. Like, I wasn't streaming, I wasn't recording, which was a little bit of a bummer. It was one of those games where my opponent got me down to 3 and I ended up playing really tight the rest of the game and coming back and winning it. I would have liked to. There were some talking points in that one for sure, but the
Jedi special.
Yeah, no joke. The stuff that no one sees, right? Everyone's watching me on stream, being like, "Why is this guy making content again?" All right, so that's gonna do it. So that goes into our constructed corner. So do me a favor, John and Alex, if one of you guys can read off, what we're gonna do is we're gonna talk about just some of the front runner decks that we're seeing right now in Throne and mainly Expedition, and then while you guys are doing that, I'm gonna load up my Eternal, because I want to go over my Zenith Stranger deck, which is one of the popular decks that I think a lot of people would like to play, just because, hey, it uses strangers. Even though I will admit the mirror is kind of horrible. So go ahead, take it away, Alex.
Let's see here. So in Throne, a couple of decks here. We got Combre Aggro, and deck I've seen a lot is Carver Sacrifice.
So real quick about the Combre Aggro, I think that list, there's still a couple of variations based on who you talk to and who builds the deck. But I think overall, even with the recent patch and note and nerfs that the deck received, I think the deck is still very solid and very consistent. I still used it to get up to Masters, and I'm still seeing it quite a bit on the ladder. Alex, go ahead and talk about the Carver deck a little bit, since you've been seeing a lot of it.
Well, it's what is it? This Destruction colors.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, me and John saw a deck last night that was just wrecking us, and it was using the Carver to sacrifice units, and it's basically a sacrifice deck. It's annoying. it's pretty good, but that was even in Expedition. So dang, in Throne it would probably be even more broken.
Yeah, the deck has the way of winning off of anything, off of nowhere, because of that shrine. Like, just deploying, because it gives everything charge and +2 attack. And the thing is that it doesn't care when it happens. It doesn't care if the last thing you did that turn is play the shrine, or if you play units after you sacrifice. They all get it. So that card, you just do a ridiculous amount of damage out of nowhere. And it's very good in Gauntlet as well. It's actually the deck I'm using here to climb out of Gauntlet right now. John, do you have anything to add about that?
That's a scary deck. Like, board wipes are like a band-aid, but you're kind of helping their game plan in some ways. Like, if you're gonna do something like hailstorm their board, like, yeah, you're gonna like stop their immediate access to sack fodder and whatnot. But I mean, if in that board wipe you hit a Kato or two, you're about to have a pretty bad time when you're staring down some 8/8s next turn with plus attack and charge and lifelink or life steal or whatever. So yeah, it's a pretty solid deck. It's a resilient deck. Their main thing, like if you can deal with it, is probably the shrine. That kind of, if you're able to deal with the first shrine, you're kind of putting them off their aggro plan at least. And so like you need to then find a way to close out the game before they can kind of rebuild in that case. And they can rebuild pretty quick if they are able to get a Carver online and start getting that card advantage going again.
Yeah, you definitely...
It's a solid deck.
Yeah, you definitely have to silence that Carver somehow because there's so many natural ways to recur it.
Yeah, or I mean, if you can somehow like silence the Kato too, like that's also pretty helpful, or it can be, but it's a twofold game plan that they have going, right? Like sometimes they just go wide and win with the shrine, and sometimes they win with some scary 8/8s.
True story.
Yeah.
All right, for Expedition, we have the deck I'm going to talk about here in a moment, Tainted Strangers. We have Argentport Unseen, which is the aggressive version of the Unseen deck. It's Argentport, pretty straightforward, with a ton of Unseen, just kind of synergizing and getting in that early aggression. A couple of overperformers, you have that sword, which escapes me right now. That gives you a +1/+1 for each battle skill the unit has, and then plays a fall short. That actually does pretty well in this format because a lot of people are running Stranger of Grodoff, Makar Stranger, and other cards that are more utility. For example, Carver. It actually kills all those cards because despite having a lot of rules text, they do not actually have battle skills. And any Stranger that has 1, 2, 3 battle skills, this thing gets pumped up very easily. And so, yeah, uses Bisma for recursion. Next up, we have Elysian Flyers. Pretty straightforward. It's actually the cheapest Expedition deck, where I believe you're only crafting a couple of rares and everything else is uncommons and commons. And you're just stacked full of flyers, and you get in by evasion. Just get on the board very early, get in there. One of the things that really helps synergize this deck is the Entrance or whatever. It's a 1-cost, 1/1 flying wisp that silences a unit that costs 3 or less in their opponent hand. That card is extremely effective and potent.
This deck got 3 nerfs this week.
Yeah, and one of them wasn't necessarily, I don't know. I always have a hard time when they nerf like super old cards. I mean, I get it, formats change, but I'm like, man, this card's been around for like years. Why are you nerfing it now? But
it's analogous to the Gargoyle from a while ago. That nerf was like, how? I thought this card was untouchable at this point, but
yeah, true story.
This deck got super nerfed, and people are still playing it.
Yep. So definitely look into it. Once again, there's multiple lists out on Eternal Warcry, so you could just check it out and see which one fits your playstyle. Then we have various variations of Armory. This is creation colors and pretty much same thing. I've seen more control decks, more unit-based decks. I've seen versions that run all kinds of weapons, versions that only run one weapon. It's pretty much whatever flavor of the week you like. I think they all have seen success and failures. And then finally, a new card that you saw with me on when I was climbing last night, John, is a Combray ramp deck that focuses on Ancestral Oasis recalls, and they run Grodoff Stranger and various top ends, but you're just kind of ramping as high as you can and then really getting your card advantage off of the Ancestral Oasis, which is the Eternity Core, with the upside that you could sack it for 2 later on to to invoke time. And that deck's actually quite strong. It just has a decent amount of removal between board wipes and a couple of weapons and things like that. So it's a solid deck as well. I like it. I have not seen like a super high payoff, like where they're ramping into something amazing like a Pit of Lanaka or anything like that. So we'll see what they decide to go with. I might try the deck to see what I can ramp into, but that's it. So all right, guys, let's go ahead and just for time purposes, I'm going to go ahead and break down my list real quick of what I'm running for Tainted Strangers, but feel free to 100% look up other better players and what they've done. This is not the end-all be-all list. It's just kind of what I've been tweaking because I saw it enough times in ladder. I built it and made some modifications. So very quickly, In my market, it is a 1-cost market because we are running Condemn, which is the 1-cost market card for Expedition, where it deals 1 damage to an enemy and it has lifesteal. And my market is Edict of Makar, Infinite Hourglass, Sabotage, Spiteful Strike, and Vara's Intervention. Okay, units. We are running 4 Magnificent Strangers, 3 Strange Navigator, and this could actually be 4. I cut it to make room for... I'll finish at the end. 4 Varet Hero in Training, 4 Makar Strangers, 4 Grodov's Strangers, 3 Travers Farm, 4 Condemn, 4 Predator's Instinct, 4 Defile, 4 Vara's Favor, 4 Banish, 4 Devouring Shadow, and 2 Nahid's Distillation. So sometimes this deck ends up running with issues on card draw, especially in the mirror. So I trimmed a Strange Navigator and a Travers Farm. Both have somewhat underperformed for me, and just made room for 2 Nahid's Distillations, which those numbers could be tweaked as well. One cool interaction is Travers Farms makes all units, all strangers, cost 1 less. So it makes it to where your Banish can destroy your opponent's Grodov Strangers because theirs will cost 5 as well. So just a small interaction that I thought was neat. And then obviously Predator's Instinct, giving you the ability to have the Makar and Grodov Strangers attack abilities trigger at essentially charge, where you can play them. And it's kind of cool. Grodov Stranger gets you a power when you play it. And all the power in this deck comes in undepleted, for the most part, minus the seat. So you are able to immediately play the Predator's Instinct and attack. And Makar Stranger, it's cool when they have 2 units on the board, because then you give it Instinct or a killer. You attack one and use its attack trigger to kill the other. Power base, 27 power, 8 time, 7 Shadow Sigil, 4 Emblem of Makar, 4 seats, 1 insignia. Oh no, 4 insignia. It's just, I did the alternate artwork. That's so annoying. Okay, there we go. All right, and I guess I will export this to Eternal Warcry and put it in the show notes for you guys as well.
Did you say how many Airmotes designs? Did you have any of those in the deck?
No, I did not.
Have you tried that at all?
I considered it. The problem is that this is already a slightly unit light deck, only running 19, and sometimes it doesn't really help in the mirror. Every other time, our removal package is actually very, very good against other aggressive units.
Your 1-for-1 removal is like plentiful there, but with 2 of the other decks that are very popular right now, we just mentioned the Argenport Unseen and Elysian Flyers, like that Airmotes Designs completely hoses those decks.
Yeah, that might actually be. It's weird because one of the issues I've ran into this deck is that it doesn't have top end removal unless you get that Devouring Shadow. Mm-hmm. So that's interesting. I wonder, I don't hate that actually. I did consider it and it just didn't play out well, but it could have been the pocket I was in, because obviously everyone knows you just hit pockets during the ladder. Yeah. Maybe I'll cut a Defile and a Vara's Favor, and then since those are a little more niche, and then put in 2 designs and see how that plays out. Yeah, I'm actually
just curious if you tried that or not.
No, I'm actually gonna try that. I like that. Anything to add, Alex or John?
No, it's a fun deck. I've played against this one a bunch. I still have some crafting to do to play this one myself, but I've definitely seen it in action, and it looks very solid.
Sweet. Yep. So expect this on the show notes at the time that you guys are listening to this. All right, cool, guys. So that's going to do it for our Constructed Corner. Let me know in the comments below if you'd like more, less, or longer Constructed Corners so we can accommodate accordingly, or if everyone listens to this is strictly for draft, which we are 100% okay with. I like still having Constructed Corner because, like we talked about at the time, there are very few other podcasts who are doing Constructed. Plus, hey, much like, for example, Alex, that only does limited, he still plays 1 game or 2 games a day to get his free pack. So we gotta finish
these quests somehow.
Yeah, true story, no joke. All right, so any closing statements, Alex or John, before we go into our plugs?
No, it's a good episode, great discussions. Looking forward to continuing to learn more about this very interesting draft format we have right now.
Yeah, super interesting. A lot of avenues to victory. I look forward to continue to learn it because there's a lot to learn. And it's fun talking about Eternal with you guys.
Awesome. Sweet. So thank you, John and Alex, for being on the show. I always appreciate you guys devoting so much of your time to me and the listeners. Feel free to catch these guys on my stream as well as in the Discord. Link in the show notes down below where you guys can join the Jedi Order, where we discuss draft picks, deck building, and all kinds of great stuff all the time. We have quite a good community going there. So thank you guys for being a part of that.
Thank you.
Once again, friendly reminder about Jed the Homrids, a ranking list. Check out on the Reddit post. You can see the link on Reddit as well as any of the many limited Discords that there are for Eternal. You can catch this content as well as great other content at YouTube. Just search EternalJourney. You'll find it, or youtube.com/EternalJourney. You can catch us, the three of us, streaming live at twitch.tv/Jedi_EJ every Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and occasionally catch John whenever he decides to stream randomly.
I've been doing some other games, but I'm actually going to do some drafting on my stream this month. I guarantee it.
Sweet.
Hi.
Yeah.
All right, guys, that's going to do it for us. Thank you so much for tuning into episode 55 of the Eternal Journey podcast. I appreciate you guys. Tune in next week where we may go in more in-depth discussion on the archetypes or even have a guest on the show. But that'll do it for this week. Till next time, as always, happy gaming.
Bye, guys.
Good luck in your draft keys, everyone.